Goodbye, Grandma. My MIL Rebecca stood there frozen, watching my son Ryan wave cheerfully as he left the house. Take care, Rebecca. I said my final goodbyes to her. Rebecca didn't understand the true meaning behind my words, so she contacted me again later. I'm Ashley. I'm a 37-year-old housewife who works at an architectural firm. Smile, smile. My smile brings happiness to my family. I say this magic phrase while practicing my smile in front of the mirror. This morning routine was taught to me by my grandma. Ashley, you're neither unfortunate nor pitiable. So don't cry. Come on, give me a smile. These words of encouragement from my grandma, given to me when I came home crying from school after being teased about not having parents, have supported me throughout my life. My grandma, always cheerful and bright, was like the sun to me. She passed away 2 years ago. She followed Grandpa to heaven soon after he died. The sadness of losing them both still hasn't healed. However, I have a loving husband and wonderful children. My husband Jeffrey is 2 years older than me and works as an architect at a construction company. My daughter Melissa is 10 years old. She's going through her preteen and rebellious phase, but is responsible and takes good care of her younger brother. My son Ryan just turned 3. He's always following her sister Melissa around, never leaving her side. Having a normal, happy family was my dream since I was a child. That had been my dream since childhood. And with that dream realized, I believed that my family of 4 could live a happy life together forever. But our happy times didn't last long. My FIL, Nicholas, who had been battling stomach cancer, passed away. Even though he had been fighting the illness for 3 years, losing such a supportive presence was a great sorrow for our family. But we couldn't afford to stay sad forever. Rebecca, who was now alone in the house, suggested that we move in with her. This reminded me of when Jeffrey and I were dating and visited his parents' house to announce our engagement. The moment I sat on the living room sofa, Rebecca started questioning me rapidly, as if she were an interviewer at a job interview. Ashley, do you also have the same first-class architect certification as Jeffrey? Yes, I do. Really? That's impressive for a woman. No, it's nothing special. By the way, what do your parents do? What does your dad do for a living? My parents divorced when I was 2, and I was adopted by my dad's parents after that. The moment I said this, Rebecca's expression turned stern. So, where are your parents now? I haven't seen my mom in a long time, so I don't know where she is. My dad remarried and lives with his new family now. If you haven't seen your mom in so long, does that mean she was the cause of the divorce? Did she have another lover or something? Otherwise, she wouldn't abandon her child, right? Huh? I was at a loss for words. Because everything Rebecca said was true. Hey, it's rude to pry into someone's family matters, Nicholas scolded her. Mom, stop. Besides, Grandpa and Grandma, who raised Ashley, were wonderful people, Jeffrey added. Whether Rebecca didn't hear them or pretended not to, she continued. Well, they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. What if your daughter ends up like your mom? Rebecca spoke loudly enough that it didn't seem like a mere soliloquy. That's enough! Ashley, I'm sorry. She means no harm, but she can be sharp-tongued. It's okay, really. After that exchange, Nicholas and Jeffrey persuaded her to reluctantly accept our marriage. However, Rebecca, who refused to acknowledge me as Jeffrey's wife, said, I have no intention of living with a stranger like you, and rejected our proposal for cohabitation. When we discussed building a new home, do whatever you want, she only said. Yet, when Jeffrey's younger brother Joshua got engaged. Stephanie's parents come from a good family and they're still together. She's truly a fitting wife for Joshua, Rebecca said. Despite this, after Nicholas passed away, Rebecca suddenly said, "Ashley, you're Jeffrey's wife, so it's only natural for you to take care of me." Mom, that's too selfish. Jeffrey, usually gentle and never one to raise his voice, spoke up for me. That was then, and this is now. I never expected Nicholas to pass away so soon. Rebecca responded nonchalantly. It's not like I'm asking you to live with me forever. Just until Joshua and Stephanie return from the US for a few years. You can't complain about that, can you? Right, Ashley? Caught off guard, I couldn't bring myself to voice any objections. In the end, we started living together in the in-laws' house, which was a 10-minute drive from our home, with the condition that it would only be until Joshua and Stephanie returned from their overseas assignment in America. Ashley, you know. Yes, what is it? This soup is a bit bland, Rebecca said as she sprinkled salt on it as usual. Mom, salt again? It's not bland at all. No, it's true. Everything Ashley cooks is so bland, it doesn't feel satisfying. But, Mom, the doctor told you to cut back on salt because of your high blood pressure. Jeffrey argued, but Rebecca, never one to listen, responded smugly. I'd be happy to eat what I like and go to the next world. Ashley, you know. It started again. Rebecca's nagging always began with this phrase. The best way to handle it was to just let it go in one ear and out the other. However, what worried me was Ryan, who would often imitate Rebecca, saying, Ashley, you know. At his age, he was eager to mimic everything, which often made me anxious. Another thing that troubled me was the triangular relationship that had formed between Rebecca, Melissa, and Ryan. What a brat! Rebecca would say loudly enough for Melissa to hear. Ignoring Rebecca, Melissa would try to leave the house as soon as she got back from school. Melissa, having seen Rebecca's true nature from a young age, refused to open up to her. Melissa, I'm coming too, Ryan would say, trying to follow Melissa. Ryan, don't you want to eat some snacks with Grandma? I bought all your favorite treats. Then she would call out, unable to resist the lure of snacks. Really? Then I'll have some snacks. Ryan would smile and say, Ryan, it's almost dinner time, so just a little bit, okay? Got it. He is smart, so he knows that without being told, right? Yeah. Seeing this every day, the only person I could vent to was Jeffrey. No matter how busy he was with work, he always took the time to listen to my troubles. Thanks to my kind-hearted Jeffrey, by the next morning, I was able to stand in front of the mirror with my usual smile, having forgotten my worries. However, about a year after we started living with Rebecca, an unexpected tragedy struck. One day, I received a call from Jeffrey's company saying he had collapsed at work. I rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. When I brought Jeffrey home from the hospital, Melissa just cried silently, and Ryan kept shaking Jeffrey's body, saying, Dad, wake up. Why are you sleeping? How was I supposed to raise these kids alone from now on? The grief and anxiety from losing Jeffrey hit me all at once. I told myself that I had to protect them, to stay strong. I vowed never to cry in front of them. But then, Rebecca uttered heartless words to me. You lost your husband, yet you don't shed a single tear. You really are heartless. I'd like to see the faces of your parents. Regardless of how much she disliked me, those were not words to say in front of the children. When Nicholas passed away a year ago, Rebecca had said, The funeral will be taken care of by Jeffrey and Joshua, so I don't need to do anything. It's a relief. She lay on the couch, laughing at a comedy show. I laughed so hard I cried, she said. For Nicholas's memorial service, she had merely suggested, we can do it on a small scale at home, leaving the rest to others. But when it came to Jeffrey, her attitude was entirely different. Jeffrey's memorial service will be at the community center, she declared, and even made the reservation. On the day of the memorial, everything went smoothly, thanks to the staff at the venue. Just as the post-service meal was about to begin, Rebecca said, Ashley, the kids and I will take our food home. You handle the rest. Holding a paper bag filled with food, she added, the cab is waiting with the kids, and left for home. I returned home 2 hours later. Huh? I noticed familiar cardboard boxes piled up. These were the boxes Rebecca had asked me to buy a few days earlier. They were placed in a corner of the garage, where Rebecca usually disposed of trash. When I opened the boxes, I found familiar clothes and shoes, all my belongings. These are things we don't need anymore, so take everything if you want, Rebecca had said. What? As I turned around, she was standing over me, looking down. Rebecca then told me, now that Jeffrey is gone, you're just a stranger to us. So, please leave. She pointed outside the gate as she spoke. Understood, I replied immediately. She seemed momentarily surprised by my quick response, but then smiled. I'm glad you're so understanding, she said. Where are Ryan and Melissa? I asked. They're at a relative's house. I'll arrange for them to be brought home later. So, just pack your things and leave quickly, Rebecca urged. As I loaded my belongings into the car. But you're lucky. Even if you're kicked out of here, you still have the house Jeffrey left you, I overheard her say. Ignoring her words, I said, Goodbye, Rebecca. Thank you for everything, and left the in-laws' house. Upon returning home, I immediately started cleaning the entire house. Before I knew it, it was pitch dark outside, and the clock showed it was past 8 p.m. Hello, Rebecca? It's Ashley. Oh, Ashley? What do you want? Rebecca's voice was clearly groggy from sleep. Ryan and Melissa haven't come home yet. Oh, Melissa and Ryan? They're already asleep. Asleep? Ryan said he wanted to sleep with me, so there's nothing I could do. Nothing you could do? Anyway, I'm exhausted from today. And tomorrow, we're leaving early for a trip to amusement park. I'll contact you later. Hello? She hung up the phone abruptly. I knew it. I was certain Rebecca never intended to send the kids back. And having been told something by Melissa, I had pretended to be deceived. This occurred a few days after Jeffrey's passing. Hey, Ryan, how about living with Grandma from now on? Yeah, with Mom and Melissa too. No, I mean just you and Grandma. If you do, I'll buy you lots of sweets and grant all your wishes. Really? You'll buy me lots of sweets? Yes, lots. Will you take me to the amusement park? Of course. As many times as you want, tens or even hundreds of times. Yay! Then I'll stay with Grandma. But you must keep this a secret from Mom and Melissa, okay? Just between you and Grandma. Okay, a secret. Melissa had told me about this conversation between Ryan and Rebecca. Ryan had confided in Melissa, saying, Melissa, this is a secret. I was genuinely worried about what would happen if Ryan decided he wanted to live with Rebecca. However, Melissa reassured me. Mom, leave Ryan to me. I have a special trick. I decided to trust Melissa's words. It was 5 days later when Rebecca contacted me to come and pick up the children. When I arrived at the in-laws' house, Melissa was already waiting with their bags at the front door. As I finished loading the luggage into the car, Melissa and I entered the house. "Mom!" Ryan came running from the back of the house, holding a souvenir bag. "Here, this is a souvenir." "A souvenir? Oh, what a lovely pendant. Thank you, Ryan." Just as I was feeling relieved to see Ryan looking well. "Oh, Ashley, you're early. Did you finish loading the luggage?" Rebecca spoke up. "Yes, I did." "Then, Ryan, say goodbye to Mom and Melissa." "What?" At the very least, she could have invited us in for coffee. I was taken aback as Ryan quickly put on his shoes, turned around, and said, "See you later, Grandma." "Bye." "Ryan, hurry to the car." "Okay." Rebecca stood frozen with her mouth agape as Ryan cheerfully waved and left the house with Melissa. Trying to suppress my laughter, I said, "Well, I'll be going now," and headed towards the door. "Wait a minute, Ashley," Rebecca called after me. "Yes, what is it?" That. That? I pretended to think for a moment and then said, "Oh, you mean the plan to make Ryan the adopted child of Joshua and Stephanie? How did you find out about that?" "No way." "Yes, that's right. Joshua called me from abroad." "No. When? How?" "The day after the memorial service." I thought it was a call to apologize for not attending the service, but I was shocked to hear that story. "What's so surprising about that?" "I thought it was inconvenient for Joshua and Stephanie not to have children." "What's wrong with that?" Her unapologetic attitude left me more exasperated than angry. "But, Rebecca," I said with a sly smile. "What?" Rebecca's face tightened. "Too bad. The Ryan you tried to bribe with gifts managed to slip away." "What?" Rebecca looked down, clearly agitated. "Let me make this clear once and for all. No matter what happens, I will never give up my children. Take care." With that, I hurried to the car where the children were waiting. On the drive home, listening to Ryan in the back seat talk about his memories of Disneyland. "Hey, Mom." He suddenly spoke in a serious tone. "What is it?" "I'm going to be a hero." "What?" Ryan's words surprised me so much that I almost turned around despite being in the middle of driving. "A wizard in a light blue dress with a pink ribbon cast a spell on me." "Right, Melissa?" "Yes, she used her magic wand and said bibbidi bobbidi boo, turning you into a brave hero." "Yeah. I'll become a hero and protect you, Mom." The one who cast the spell on Ryan was the fairy godmother. The magical fairy who turned a pumpkin into a carriage. Melissa had translated the magical words for Ryan. "If Ryan's protecting me, then I have nothing to fear. Thank you." Even though I had vowed never to cry in front of my children, tears welled up uncontrollably. Melissa, sitting in the passenger seat, quietly handed me a hand towel. I promised myself again that I would protect my children. Several months passed. One day, as I was enjoying peaceful days with my family of 3, I received a phone call. "Hello, Ashley?" The voice on the other end was tearful, accompanied by sniffles. "Hello. How have you been?" The caller was Rebecca. "Even though Jeffrey is gone, you're still part of the family, so it's okay to call you, right? Am I still family? I thought I became a stranger." "That's..." "So, what brings you here?" "That was then. Anyway, I actually fell at home and twisted my ankle." "I'm sorry to hear that." Yes, it's terrible. I can't even drive to go shopping. Drive? Oh, you mean the pink bicycle? In that case, you should ask Stephanie for help, shouldn't you? Yes, that's right. But I can't ask Stephanie since she's abroad, right? That's true. So, how much will you pay me? What? How much? I mean, how much will you pay me to work as your housekeeper? Why should I pay family? I'm not sure what you're misunderstanding, but I'm not so kind-hearted to work for free for someone else's household. But... What? Legally, we're already strangers. That's the fact. Legally? How can you be so heartless? You seem unaware. When you divorce or lose a spouse, you're legally considered strangers. There's no obligation to report anything. What? I don't understand why you're angry. You should be thanking me instead. You. Well, I have a customer waiting, so I'll end the call here. I hung up the phone and immediately blocked her number. Ashley, you did it. The guest is Stephanie. She's currently back in the country alone for a short visit. Maybe I went a bit too far? Not at all. It was quite satisfying. By now, I'm sure Rebecca is on the phone with Joshua, utterly devastated. Yes, although I do wish I could see her face up close. Absolutely. It was Joshua who advised me that legally, Rebecca is just another person to me. I can only imagine how Rebecca must feel having that truth hurled at her by her own son. Stephanie is here today to discuss the new house she and Joshua are planning to build once they return. After I was kicked out of my in-laws' house, I left my job at the architectural firm I had been working at and started planning to open my own design office. When I told Joshua and Stephanie about it, they said they wanted me to design their house. It feels so strange. We became close only after Jeffrey passed away. Until then, I had only exchanged greetings with Joshua and Stephanie a few times a year at my in-laws' house, without any meaningful conversation. Our relationship grew closer, ironically, after Jeffrey's death. It was because of the adoption plan Rebecca had concocted. I also learned at that time that Stephanie had a uterine condition and had to give up on having children. Yet, Joshua and Stephanie accepted this reality and decided to enjoy their life together as a couple. Some ties are cut, while others are formed. I believe it's Jeffrey who brought us together even after his passing. Mom, I'm home. It's Stephanie. Melissa, Ryan, long time no see. How have you been? We're good. By the way, Ashley, I've been meaning to ask, where did you get that cute pendant? Isn't it adorable? It's a magical pendant Jeffrey got for me as a souvenir. But I was the one who picked it out. A magical pendant? I'm so jealous. Well then, why don't we all go to there together next time? Thank you. That sounds wonderful. Let's do that. The children chatted happily with Stephanie. Watching the three of them, I couldn't help but smile. Around my neck, the glass slipper pendant sparkled. The doorbell rang. Eddie, my husband, was home. Usually, I would go to the door to greet him, but today I didn't have the energy to rush down. The doorbell rang again, louder and more impatient this time, than the sound of the door unlocking and opening. Hey! At least come and greet me properly. I could hear his voice shouting from downstairs. Summoning all the strength I could, I replied, I'm sorry. I've been taking care of Mila, and I'm not feeling well either. Our daughter Mila had come home from school early with a high fever. Taking care of her, I too had started to feel feverish and dizzy. Eddie didn't respond, whether he heard me or not. I could just hear his heavy footsteps, indicating his displeasure. Hey! Dinner isn't ready. I couldn't help but be exasperated by Eddie's predictable behavior and heartless words. Hey! I've got an important meeting tomorrow. I can't afford to get sick from her. Eddie glared at me with a puzzled look, waving me away. Then, out of nowhere, he took my sheets to the storage room. He even went upstairs and ripped off Mila's sheets while she was sleeping. Mila shrank back, confused by the sudden commotion. Sick people need to be isolated. Go to the storage room. No way. Mila and I were pushed into the cramped storage room with no windows. My name is Noelle. I live in a suburban house, spending my days doing household chores. Eddie leaves for work by 7 a.m., having worked at an insurance company for nearly 30 years since graduating college. Eddie always gets dressed in his suit by 6 a.m., appears in the living room, sits at the table, and picks up the newspaper I laid out for him. Then he silently sips the coffee I hand him and eats the toast with a generous amount of margarine. Our routine hasn't changed since we got married, even after having children, even on days off. His dedication to his job has earned him recognition, and he now holds a managerial position. I found out about his promotion much later, as he didn't even bother to share the news. Looking back, Eddie remained unchanged in our marriage, while I evolved. Since childhood, I loved reading, always immersing myself in books whenever I had free time. I would sometimes go out to play with friends, but even then, I'd be thinking about the book I was reading. Naturally, the more outgoing kids formed other groups, and fewer people gathered around me. At the time, it didn't hurt me. I was actually happy to have more time to myself. Spending time in the library, surrounded by books I loved, shaped half of my life. People might have seen me as a bit of a loner. But sometimes, I could be unexpectedly proactive. I hated wasting time the most. Reading and diving into the world of books required a quiet environment and plenty of time. Pointless discussions that never reached a conclusion, committees where no one volunteered and only silence remained, all these things just ate into my day. So, if I thought stepping up would wrap things up quickly, I'd immediately raise my hand and give my opinion. It's funny to think about it now, but this assertiveness once got me elected as the leader for a sports day event. At that time, I thought finishing the event quickly would ensure I had time to read, so I had a long-term plan in mind. Eddie and I met at a university club. That's where I met Eddie. Eddie always prioritized efficiency and acted accordingly, even as a student. It wasn't fate or a passionate love confession that brought us together. Other members of the club often enjoyed their university life adventures, so the clubroom was usually empty. Most of the time, it was just him and me in the clubroom. Even in the same space, there was no pressure, and we naturally started talking about literature. This is what it means to have good chemistry, I guess. Thinking back, maybe I was enjoying my own adventure too. After Eddie graduated and started working, it was the first time I felt the clubroom was lonely. Oh, this is what love feels like. Apparently, he felt the same sense of loss, and a few years later, he proposed to me. That is the reason for our current situation. Eddie's income was sufficient, so our family never faced financial difficulties. Therefore, I didn't have to work and could focus on household chores. Actually, I had considered going out to work several times, but Eddie refused. According to him, it was the ultimate humiliation for people to think that a husband's income was so low that his wife had to work. Another routine in our household is waking up our only daughter, Mila, who is in 8th grade. She has never gotten up with just one call, and I have to call her at least 3 times. Though she has become more responsible since starting middle school, today it took 5 calls before she stumbled down the stairs. Conversations start in our house only after Mila wakes up. She talks about her friends, complains about her homeroom teacher, and the latest popular artists. Eddie never responds, so she talks to me. While making sandwiches for the two of them, I listen half-heartedly, but I enjoy discussing the plot of the drama we watch together. In a household with little conversation, Mila is the one who brightens things up like a flower. Though I don't say it out loud, I am grateful that Mila's presence balances our family. Unlike us two bookworms, Mila has loved physical activities since she was little. Mila, who is extremely competitive, cried loudly when she didn't come in first at the elementary school sports day, delaying the next program. Although she has become more manageable with age, she has always been a child who constantly moves around, running around the playground during breaks. In the upper grades of elementary school, she became interested in tennis and wanted to join a tennis class. After entering middle school, she quit the tennis class but continued playing tennis in her school club activities. Besides physical activities, she can't stand having no plans on her days off and always finds reasons to go out. The topics of her conversations about friends change so frequently that it's hard to keep track. She easily makes friends with anyone, whether it's a child who often comes over, a club activity friend, or a classmate sitting next to her. When it comes to club activities, I have to know not only Mila's friends but also their parents to express my thanks properly. When Mila first entered middle school, I desperately made a notebook to keep track of her friends' relationships. I was worried that the pandemic might change Mila's social interactions. Club activities lost their competitions and games, and group outings were restricted. I thought she might feel lonely, but with modern SNS, not much has changed. I really want to take the family on trips, but the current infection control measures make it difficult. I feel guilty as a parent, but Mila doesn't seem to mind and shows no concern. Though Mila arrives at the table with a messy bedhead in the morning, she starts chatting non-stop once she sits down. The toast in her hand hardly gets any smaller. Keep an eye on the time. Okay. After spending some time zoning out, Mila slowly starts moving like in slow motion. This is the usual morning routine in our household. Eddie finishes his breakfast, folds the newspaper, and places it on the table. He stands up, heads to the sink to shave and brush his teeth. The chair Eddie stood from is always turned towards the hallway at the same angle. So meticulous, I think. However, he never clears his coffee cup or plate. In the early days of our marriage, I tried to address this, but Eddie always responded, "That's a housewife's job." After 23 years of marriage, I once consulted with my mother-in-law. Was he always this laid back? Carefully, I asked her about his henpecked husband nature. Seeing through my intention, she smiled wryly and sighed. My husband was the epitome of a henpecked husband. Eddie wasn't particularly attached to him, but it's amazing how much he takes after him. My husband was the epitome of a henpecked husband. Eddie wasn't particularly attached to him, but it's amazing how much he takes after him. His attitude has remained unchanged even after Mila was born. As far as I remember, Eddie has never taken Mila out for fun. Although we've been on a few family trips, Eddie always looks expressionless in the photos. Neither Eddie nor I have any notable hobbies. Originally similar, our interest in books waned as we couldn't find quiet reading time. My attachment to unread books gradually faded, and I even got rid of some of the books I had accumulated since my student days. Hey, about these books on the shelf, should we get rid of them? They're quite damaged, and some covers have faded so much you can't tell what they are. We probably won't read them again in the future. Shut up! Work is more important than reading. You should understand by now that you can't always spend time on things you like. Get rid of them if you want. As the years go by, various passions cool. Some things change, some things don't, But it's strange that only the unpleasant things seem to stay the same for a long time. Hey, lunch is late. Do you know what time it is? Oh, I'm sorry. I hurriedly prepared and handed Eddie a sandwich. Geez, he gets irritated if he's even a minute late leaving the house. Eddie hurried out the door. At some point, we stopped saying I'm off and have a good day. But now, that feels normal. I no longer got worked up over it. Sometimes I would remember how Eddie used to laugh a lot in the beginning, but love and romance are different things. I wasn't looking for a romantic game anymore. I didn't need him to hold me tenderly. Is this what they call the state of resignation? As I pondered this, I called out to Mila once more. As Eddie, who kept precise time, left for work, Mila finally started to worry about the time. What? It's already this late? She finally began stuffing the half-eaten toast into her mouth. This was our routine every day until one afternoon. After a simple lunch, I was doing the dishes when I heard the door open. Oh, Mila. Was today a day for early dismissal from school? As I thought this, I headed to the entrance. There was Mila sitting on the floor. What's wrong, Mila? You're early. Your face is red. I reached out to touch her neck. Her skin felt unusually hot. Hotter than just being warmed by the outside temperature. You have a high fever. It must have been tough. Usually, this would be the time she starts talking about all sorts of things that happened at school, but she could only manage. I was fine in the morning, but around second period, I started feeling bad and went to the nurse's office. I thought I could make it home, but I got nauseous on the bus. I was fine in the morning, but around second period, I started feeling bad and went to the nurse's office. I thought I could make it home, but I got nauseous on the bus. I quickly cleared her bed, and she collapsed onto it. Do you want something to drink? Yeah, just let me sleep for now. She croaked. With the flu going around, I was worried and managed to get her changed. As soon as the evening clinic opened, I called and made an appointment. Perhaps because she had slept a bit, she was more mobile than when she first got home. Still, I had to support her as we hurried to the clinic. The waiting room was packed, but because of Mila's high fever, we waited in an isolated area. Waiting with Mila resting her head on my shoulder, struggling to breathe, felt like an eternity, though it was actually only about 30 minutes. I wanted to let her lie down, but there was no space in the cramped waiting area. Finally, we were called into the examination room. Seeing that neither the doctor nor the nurse wore protective gear, I felt a little relieved. The diagnosis was a common cold, and no isolation was needed. I was relieved, but Mila was still unwell. After taking Mila home and sending her to her room, I rushed to the drugstore. I grabbed sports drinks for hydration, cooling pads, and debated whether she could eat jelly and soup before tossing them into the cart. I hurried back home and checked on her, who was resting peacefully. Feeling reassured, I went down to the living room, sank into the sofa, and took a deep breath. Maybe from all the running around, I felt more exhausted than usual. The sofa felt incredibly comfortable. Every muscle in my body seemed to relax completely, and a deep sigh escaped my lips. There was still time before Eddie got home. I still had time to prepare dinner. Just a little rest, I thought, as I lay down on the sofa. At some point, I dozed off, and when I opened my eyes again, the clock showed it was already evening. Oh my! I tried to get up, but my whole body felt heavy and my head pounded with each heartbeat. I quickly remembered the day's schedule. I might have caught her cold. Tentatively, I took my temperature. The thermometer read over 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Dazed, I pondered what to do next. I didn't have the strength or time to go back to the clinic. The biggest challenge was Eddie. He believed it was my duty to handle the household chores. If he came home to find nothing prepared, he would surely explode in anger. Just thinking about standing up and walking to the kitchen felt overwhelming. I quickly composed a text to Eddie, explaining that I wasn't feeling well. I told him that I couldn't prepare dinner and asked if he could buy something for dinner. My head was pounding, but I tried to write in a way that wouldn't upset Eddie. I sent the text and waited anxiously for his response, but there was none. After a while, the message was marked as read, but no reply came. I realized how much I was being swayed by Eddie's reactions. That's right, I need to focus on getting something for Mila to eat. Despite feeling dizzy, I made my way to the kitchen. Through the pain and nausea, I managed to make some soup for Mila and placed it by her bedside. Mila was sleeping soundly, but her face was still red. Small beads of sweat dotted her forehead. I gently wiped her sweat with a towel. Her warmth still radiated through the damp cloth. She still had a high fever. Soon after, the doorbell rang. Eddie was home. Usually, I would go to the door to greet him, but today I didn't have the energy to rush down. After a few more impatient rings of the doorbell, the door unlocked and opened. "Hey, at least come and greet me properly." I could hear Eddie's voice shouting from the entrance. Summoning all my strength, I replied, "I'm sorry, I've been taking care of Mila, and I'm not feeling well myself." He didn't respond. But I could hear his heavy, irritated footsteps, so he must have heard. Immediately, his angry voice echoed. "Hey! Dinner isn't ready!" I couldn't help but be exasperated by Eddie's predictable behavior and heartless words. I slowly made my way down the stairs and finally reached the living room. "Welcome back. I sent you a text earlier, did you see it? Mila has a high fever, and I think I've caught it too." "You managed to make dinner for Mila, so you can make mine too," Eddie shouted, cutting off my words. "I barely managed to make Mila's dinner." "You're an adult, you should be able to understand the text," I retorted. Eddie seemed slightly taken aback, but quickly remembered something. "Hey, I have an important meeting tomorrow. I can't afford to get sick." He glared at me with a harsh look and gestured for me to move away. "Sick people should be isolated. Go to the storage room." Without thinking, he grabbed my sheets and took them to the storage room. He even went upstairs and ripped the sheets off Mila's bed while she was sleeping. Startled, Mila curled up, not understanding what was happening. "What are you doing? Mila has a fever." Backing away as if I were a monster, Eddie snarled. "I don't care. My promotion depends on this meeting." He threw Mila's sheets into the storage room. There's no point in talking to him anymore, I thought, utterly exhausted. I wrapped Mila's remaining blanket around her shivering shoulders. Without looking at me as I silently prepared water and medicine, Eddie put on a mask and yelled, "Get in there quickly!" Eddie pushed us halfway into the storage room and started disinfecting the common areas with alcohol. This felt like we were being treated like monsters. "Use the upstairs bathroom. Don't come down to the first floor," he ordered, his words piercing through the door along with the sound of the alcohol spray. He seemed to have plenty of time to disinfect, despite his important meeting tomorrow. Mila and I ended up spending the night in the storage room. It started to rain outside. I could hear the gentle sound of rain, the irregular drips falling from the eaves. Although we were sheltered from the rain and wind inside the house, the storage room had no air conditioning and only a small skylight. The room, filled with seasonal appliances and clothes we rarely used, only had enough space for one person to lie down. Even though it was early summer, the heat lingered after sunset. The poor ventilation made it impossible to rest with the humidity from the rain and our fevers. Whether it was the heat or our fevers, the room felt stuffy. The skylight couldn't be opened. Mila's fever seemed to have subsided, but I could hear her faint sobs, likely from Eddie's harsh treatment. She tried to muffle her cries so I wouldn't worry, but her effort only tightened the knot in my heart. I couldn't tell if my fever or my thoughts were causing my head to steam. Since Mila was born, my priorities had shifted from reading to her. Whenever Mila suddenly wanted to go out or asked me to practice tennis with her, I could easily close my book. I didn't mind sending her to tennis lessons. Making her happy became my greatest joy. Mila, who is the most important thing in my life. The time spent thinking, worrying, and enjoying life with Mila. Her sleeping face, even as a middle schooler, was still adorable. My precious daughter. Thinking about it, there have been countless times I've been exasperated with Eddie, but this was unprecedented. My rising anger had apparently reached its limit. I started to plan my actions for the coming days. My long-dormant assertiveness began to reignite. How much time had passed? I must have fallen asleep. Morning came, and the rain had stopped. I touched her neck and felt the coolness. Her fever had finally broken, and I felt a sense of relief. At the same time, I felt lightened. I slowly stood up to put my plan into action. He must have gone to work on time. Just wait and see. Mom, I'm feeling much better than yesterday, but my whole body aches from sleeping on the floor. You're still a bit unsteady. Don't push yourself. Mila and I took turns showering and warmed up in the living room. What was with Dad's behavior? I don't even want to call him Dad anymore. This time, it was awful. I've had many grievances, but this was too much. Mom, you've put up with too much. This is grounds for a divorce. Mila, if that happens, would you come with me? Of course. If it means staying with him, I'd rather live on my own. Holding back tears of relief and joy, I shared my plan with Mila, who nodded firmly. We devised a detailed plan and executed it diligently. First, we exaggerated our coughing and sneezing in the living room and bedroom. We replaced the alcohol in the spray bottles with tap water. We swapped the disinfectant wipes with regular wet wipes. We kept only the necessary painkillers and cold medicine and disposed of the rest. Mila's prescription from the clinic had been used up by the time she recovered. I picked up my smartphone for a particular search. When Eddie came home that night, he made no comments or showed any concern for us, focusing on preparing dinner. More than the disappointment of not hearing a caring word from him, I felt a determination similar to just wait and see. A month passed. The plan was a bit delayed, but the results came steadily. Eddie came home earlier than usual, looking unsteady. Oh, what's wrong? Are you feeling sick? I feigned concern with thinly veiled words. I think I have a fever. I'm worried about work, but I left today's tasks to my subordinates. From his tone, it seemed he intended to go to work tomorrow. Work is important, right? Why not? Now is a crucial time. Suppressing a smirk, I finally said the words I had been waiting to say. Mila and I should avoid getting sick. For the sake of your important work, we'll stay separate. I said this and gave Mila, who had just come home, the okay sign. Mila and I quickly gathered our pre-packed bags and moved out. Hey, who's going to take care of me? He called out in a hoarse voice. Sorry, but we have to stay isolated. There's a note on the desk, I replied, leaving the divorce papers as we walked out. I heard his angry shouts from behind, but I felt no regret. Instead, I was filled with a sense of liberation, as if freed from long-standing worries. The sunlight seemed brighter than usual. Mila seemed to feel the same, humming a tune. Her steps were almost like skipping. We moved into the house we had found earlier. We had been gradually moving things over, and he hadn't noticed. The new house, though smaller, was big enough for the two of us. "It's smaller than the old house. I'm sorry." I apologized, and Mila responded cheerfully. "It's fine. It's much bigger than the storage room." Mila replied with a hint of irony, and we both burst into laughter. For her, the biggest benefit was that there was a shopping district between her school and home, so she could hang out with friends and still get home on time. Her surprising efficiency must be the only positive trait she inherited from Eddie. After that, Eddie's calls came non-stop, draining my phone's battery. Texts were endless too. I quickly went to the phone company and changed my number and phone. Regarding the divorce, I contacted the court and found no records had been submitted, so I sent a certified letter through my lawyer. The lawyer facilitated the proceedings for an amicable divorce. Given that our lifestyle had relied heavily on Eddie's income, I expected a tough custody battle. However, Eddie didn't contest custody, so I easily obtained it. In truth, I had been saving money secretly since I started feeling resigned about my life with Eddie. Eddie, who never cared about household finances, was unaware of this. I had enough savings, but to cover Mila's tuition and future expenses, I started working part-time. I found a job at a small bookstore that also dealt in second-hand books. I liked the owner's personality and their respect for books, so I applied and got the job. Having lived as a housewife, I was nervous about handling a job, but my efficiency was recognized, and I got along well with my colleagues. Indeed, I could be proud of my efficiency over the past month since deciding to divorce. Mila seemed even brighter than before. Perhaps Eddie had chained us both down invisibly. Looking out the window of my part-time job, I saw Eddie walking tiredly in a wrinkled suit. I doubted he even knew how to use an iron or where it was. I had no interest in a passing stranger and turned back to my work immediately. Recently, I found more time to read at home again. Partly because I had more time, but mainly because Mila was becoming more independent. "Good morning." Mila greeted me as I woke up, preparing toast for breakfast. She was indeed changing. I felt joy in this change as I bit into my toast,